Okay, today we're talking about lesson 3. And first, a couple things. Remember your test proctor agreement. It's at the end of the syllabus. You need to make sure you locate someone. It could be me. If you're close to Greenville, you can come and take the test here. That is totally fine. But you need to have a test proctor sign the agreement and set up a test schedule. And then also remember, keep studying all the vocabulary. At the end of each lesson, there's the page that lists all the vocabulary words. You're responsible for all of the words on those pages from each chapter. Okay. All right, quick review of our subject pronouns. You're going to need to know these throughout the whole course. When we talk about verbs, you're always going to need to remember. In Spanish, we say yo, to say I do something. You, we say tú. Practice these with me. Repeat after me. Repite. When I say this, you get some practice in. Yo, tú, él, ella, usted. He, she, you in the polite form. Nosotros, vosotros. And remember, this is the plural equivalent of tú. So this means we use vosotros generally when we're speaking to more than one person, but we're familiar with those people. Vosotros. And it's only used in certain parts of the Spanish-speaking world. Spain, the northern part of Spain, and other portions of Latin America, but few portions in Latin America use vosotros. Ellos, all males. Ellas, all females, they. And you, plural. Ustedes. Now here's where we say you all when we're referring to people we may not know all of them personally. Okay? And it's the way most of Latin America says you all in whatever scenario, and they don't use vosotros. So, yo, tú, él, ella, usted, nosotros, vosotros, ellos, ellas, and ustedes. Okay? Make sure you know not only what those words are, but then what corresponding verb form go with each of those. So, with AR verbs, we already have talked about those in lesson 2. They have these similar endings, but with A's in each of these spots for the vowel, for AR regular verbs. Now in lesson 3, we're dealing with ER and IR regular verbs. So yo, with the same ending as in the AR verbs, yo vivo, for example, I live. Tú comes, you eat. Él, ella y usted vive, live. He, she, or you live. Nosotros comemos, or vivimos, we live, or we eat. Vosotros coméis, o vivís, you eat, or you all live. And ellos, ellas, y ustedes comen, o viven. And we put that ending on. Okay, so these are regular ER and IR endings. For any verb that's a regular ER or IR verb, we put on these endings, and we have that those people are doing that activity. Practice those along with your AR regular endings. You need to be able to say that any person does any of these activities, and with all the verbs that you have now in lesson 2 and 3, learning what those verbs are and how to put them in the right form with whoever is doing it. Okay? Now, we also have, in lesson 3, 2 irregular verbs. Tener and venir. Now, irregular verbs just simply mean they conjugate in a different way than the regular ones. The regular ones, all you have to do is take off the AR, ER, or IR and add those regular endings. With irregular verbs, there's something different about it. It doesn't matter what. It could be just a little thing or it could be a major change. But it's an irregular verb because it doesn't follow that same pattern. So, tener is irregular in the yo form by adding a G in there. Okay, so it's yo tengo. Tú. Now the next two forms take the G out, but they add an I in there. It's called a stem changing verb. So tengo, tienes, tú tienes. Él, ella, usted tiene. Nosotros, now in these two forms, that I gets removed again. So here we have tenemos and tenéis. So the I gets taken out again, it goes back to the original stem, and then back to this form is tienen. Ustedes or ellos, ellas tienen. Alright? That means to have. I have, you have, he or she has, we have, you all have, they have, or you all have. Okay? That's tener, to have. Now, venir, to come, is irregular as well, and we learn them together because they're irregular in identical ways. So venir is conjugated just like tener, but with a V instead of the T. So the whole thing looks identical. Vengo, vienes, etc. Same thing as up here, but just put a V instead of that T, and you have the conjugation for venir. Okay? Now, to practice this, what I'll often do is ask you to tell me that a certain person comes from a certain place, because we're also learning countries and where they're located in lessons 2 and 3. So I'll ask you to tell me that a person comes from a certain place, and then what nationality they are. Alright? So, here we have Marcos viene de Peru. He comes from Peru, so he is Peruvian. And we say he is in Spanish, you know already, by lesson 2, and even in lesson 1. We're going to now change, instead of saying Marcos, we'll change to the pronoun, since we've already said Marcos and we know who we're talking about. Él es peruano. Repite, peruano. Peruano. Él es peruano. So, Marcos viene de Peru, él es peruano. And so whenever I give you a model like that, that's how I want you to respond. So, here we have ellas. First putting the correct form of venir, which is vienen, ellas vienen de Canadá. Ellas vienen de Canadá. Son canadienses. And notice we do not capitalize nationalities, names of nationalities of people in Spanish like we do in English. So, son canadienses. Repite, canadienses. Also notice that I have made that plural, canadienses, because they are plural. Son canadienses. Now, with the verb tener, we also have set expressions in Spanish using the verb tener. Right? Whereas in English, often the equivalent of these expressions in Spanish, we will use the verb to be. For example, here we would say, the squirrel is thirsty. Right? But in Spanish, we say the squirrel has thirst. So we use the verb tener, which means to have, because thirst, the word sed, is actually a noun for thirst. So literally we have to say, la ardilla tiene sed. La ardilla tiene sed. Literally that would translate, the squirrel has thirst. In English, of course, we would translate that, the squirrel is thirsty. Here's another practice with venir. To. The correct form of venir is vienes de Ecuador. Tú vienes de Ecuador. Now, you are, eres, you are, ecuatoriana, ecuatoriana. Or if you're talking to a female, of course, you would say ecuatoriana. Tú eres ecuatoriana. Bien? It's a little dark here, I'm not sure how well you see that, but these people are, there's snow all around, so we're going to say that they are cold. Same thing, in English we say they are cold, using the verb to be, but in Spanish we use the verb tener again, and we say they have cold. So, ellos tienen frío. Ellos tienen frío. Tienen frío. Once again, I am from, yo vengo de España. Remember when we have a tilde over the N, we get a ñ sound in there, like the N in our word onion, in the English word onion. The Spanish N with a tilde sounds exactly like that. España. Repite, España. And now I'm going to say, I am español. Yo soy español. If I'm a female, I would say, yo soy española. Okay? Now, also in Spanish, we use tener to talk about age. In English, we say, I am 16 years old, or I am 29 years old, like myself. So when we talk about other people, we say the same thing. He is 3 years old, we would say in English. Juanito tiene, so we have to get the right form of the verb, tener. Juanito tiene 3 años. Juanito tiene 3 años. Ustedes vienen de los Estados Unidos. Ustedes son norteamericanos. Or if you're talking to all females, ustedes son norteamericanas. Okay? Getting the idea? This person's in a hurry. Again, in English we say, you are in a hurry. In Spanish we say, you have a hurried state. Okay, you have, again, a noun, so we don't have a great translation. In Spanish we use tener to say the same thing. Prisa means hurry or a hurried state. So we would say, tú tienes prisa. Tú tienes prisa. You are in a hurry. Vosotros venís de México. Vosotros sois mexicanos o mexicanas. Venís de México. Sois mexicanos, mexicanas. Okay, let's practice some phrases then, some short sentences. So to say we rest, we know that the subject pronoun for we is nosotros. And then what do we have to do to the verb rest, which the infinitive is descansar. So to change it and say we rest, we have to say nosotros descansamos. We rest. Nosotros descansamos. Okay? Now, because descansamos, the only ending that amos can mean is we, I don't really have to say the nosotros here. I can just say descansamos, and it has to mean we rest. There's no other thing that descansamos can mean because it has that amos ending. Okay? I can say nosotros descansamos. Right? If I want to add emphasis or if I'm just stating it that way, that's okay. But we don't need to say nosotros if we put that amos ending on the end. You listen to the radio. Tú escuchas la radio. Tú escuchas. You, with the right ending on the verb, tú escuchas la radio. I work, the verb for to work is trabajar. So when you say I, trabajo los lunes. I work. Once again, I can put yo if I want to, but I don't have to. As soon as I put that O ending on that verb, it has to mean I work. So, trabajo los lunes. Now, notice in English we say I work on Mondays. In Spanish, we don't say trabajo en lunes. No, no, no. On Mondays or on any day of the week, we use the article, plural, to say on that day of the week regularly. So, trabajo los lunes. I work on Mondays. Even though los generally means the, having to do with days of the week, when we make it plural like that, it means on that day regularly if we're doing an activity. Okay? They eat breakfast. Ellos. And here we do want to put the ellos because comen can mean they, all girls, could mean they, all guys, or it could mean ustedes, you all, plural. So we say ellos comen desayuno. Ellos comen desayuno. She writes. Once again, we do want to put ella because escribe could mean three different things. Ella escribe. She writes. Notice the E ending to agree with the she form of the verb. Okay? We live in the United States. Once again, remember, I don't have to put nosotros. I could. But I'm just going to put vivimos en los Estados Unidos. Remember, you need to be learning your countries, how to say them in Spanish. Los Estados Unidos. Vivimos en los Estados Unidos. And then also for lesson 3, we have these locational prepositions. You need to be able to state where things are in relation to something else. So the waste can is behind the desk. La papelera está, we use the form of the verb estar when we're talking about location. La papelera está detrás del escritorio. Okay, now let's explain this del. The waste can is behind the desk. Behind is detrás de, just by itself, detrás de. But because el escritorio has this article el in front of it, we only have 2 contractions in the Spanish language. In English, we have a number of them. Won't, can't, don't, and etc. We have a number of contractions. In Spanish, only 2. When we have the word de coming in front of the article el, so está detrás de el escritorio. It's behind the desk. But whenever we have de and el together, we contract that to form del. Okay, and it means of the or from the. So in this case, it's behind the desk. It's behind of the desk, literally, is what that's coming out to. All right? So locational prepositions, make sure you learn those as well. And then finally, a little quick review of how do we say that we like to do something. Remember that when we say we like to do a verb, to read, which in this case is leer, A verb is treated as singular. So we say, me gusta leer. To read pleases me. I'm sorry, I didn't read it myself very well, did I? To read pleases them. They like to read, so les gusta leer. To read pleases them. Okay, so there we have a little summary of Lesson 3. Once again, ask me questions, email, text, and we'll go over any questions that you have on our Thursday night gathering.